Hi everyone, my name is Katie and I'm a teacher with the Cloud Project, and today I'll be talking to you about environmental policy. If you haven't watched the other videos about climate change, please watch those first, and then come back to this one. For this lesson, you will need a pen or pencil, a notebook to write out your thoughts in, poster paper, colorful markers, and a learning mindset. In our lesson today, we will be covering a few important questions. First, what is environmental policy? Secondly, who can create environmental policy? Thirdly, how does our government pass environmental policy laws? Fourth, what is the goal of environmental policy? And finally, how has environmental policy helped us with environmental issues in the past? Let's dive in to learn the answers to these questions. Environmental policy is started by groups of people or companies who are interested in establishing laws or regulations to implement those laws in order to help environmental issues. Before we continue, let's stop and think for a moment. You can pause the video and respond to these questions in your notebook. So, we have two very important questions, which is one, can you think of any environmental policies? These can be stuff that you've heard about on the news or maybe you have learned about from other sources. And number two, does your school or any places you go to regularly have any regulations that could help the environment? These could be very simple things like asking you to put your trash into the trash bin and your recycling into the recycling bin, or they can be a little bit more complex. Take the time to think thoughtfully and answer this question now that you have an understanding of what environmental policy is. Alright, now that we're back, let's start by answering this first question of who can create environmental policy. Well, here we have three major groups that can create environmental policies. The first one is companies. Companies can create environmental policy by making rules that maintain water and energy usages, as well as waste management. They can also make laws targeting other things, but those are the most common. Governments can also pass environmental laws. Governments have different levels. We have the city level, the state level, and even a federal level, which is the entire country. And each level of government can pass different environmental laws. Public and private organizations. They can also make environmental policies. For this video, we'll mostly be focusing on how governments at a federal level, which is the entire country, pass laws. So right now, you're going to learn how a bill becomes a law. Alright, let's recap real quick. We have three branches of government. We have the executive branch, which is our president. We have the judicial branch, which is all of our courts, including the Supreme Court. And thirdly, we have the legislative branch, which contains the House of Representatives and the Senate, all in one thing called the Congress. We'll be using this information to learn how a bill becomes a law in the government. So first, we need a problem. In this example, let's say that our problem is that there are not enough trees in our neighborhood. A proposed solution to this, which is called a bill, could be to plant more trees. Now that we have our problem and a proposed solution, we'll bring this proposed solution to a member of the House of Representatives or a senator. Let's say we'll start off in the House of Representatives. So, our representative will take it to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives has a lot of members, and they'll all read through this bill or this proposed solution, and they'll vote on it. Do they want it to become a law, or do they not want it to become a law? And let's say a majority of the people say that they'd like it to become a law. Alright, so the bill has just passed through the House of Representatives. They've said that they'd like this to become a law. Now it'll pass on to the Senate, and the Senate also has a lot of members. They'll each read your bill, and they will decide whether they would also like to see your bill become a law. If the majority of them say yes, they'd like to see your bill become a law, it'll pass on to the president. The president, as you'll remember, is the executive branch, and the president will say that yes, they would like to see this bill become a law, or no, they would not like to see this become a law. If they say no, that is a veto. But let's say they'd like it to become a law. Because it has gone through the House of Representatives and passed, because it has gone through the Congress and it has passed, and because it has been signed on by the president, this bill will become a law. But let's say the president vetoes your bill. This means that they say no to your bill. It goes all the way back to where it started at the House of Representatives, and it has to go through each of them again. But now it needs an even greater majority of people to say they'd like it to become a law in order to become a law. It's a lot harder to pass a bill if it has been vetoed. Now, there are many variations for how a bill can become a law. Okay, That was a lot of information, but it was very important because environmental policy are laws, and now we've just learned how to make laws. So now that we've learned the basics of who and how environmental policies can come to life, let's learn about what the goals of these laws actually are. And it's actually quite simple. The goal of these laws is to protect the environment. The problem is that lots of different people want to protect the environment in lots of different ways for different reasons, and that's sometimes where we have conflict, but it's also awesome because there's so many different solutions to explore when it comes to one problem, when we have a lot of different voices speaking up. Before we go, let's do a quick activity to summarize everything that we learned in today's lesson. So, grab your poster papers and markers, because today you're going to draft your own policy. That might sound daunting, but it's super simple. We'll begin by picking an environmental issue that you are interested in. Maybe you can just look around your house or think about your neighborhood to find some problem that you'd like to address. Maybe it's as simple as planting more trees, as I mentioned earlier, or maybe it's a little bit more complicated. Now that you have your problem, we need to think of a solution. So you're going to briefly describe what your issue is and explore how it affects the world and humans. So, in my example earlier, I used trees. Trees are super important because they give us oxygen, so without enough trees, we don't have as much oxygen, and that might mean that we have more pollution in the air. So that would affect both humans and the animals around us. So, now that we have our problem and how it affects the world, now it's time to draft our solution. You can think of any kind of solution you'd like. Ideally, it would eliminate this problem or at least help to stop it. So, in my example, I would plant more trees and maybe also put in a regulation that says that people can't cut down trees. There are so many different solutions to any given problem, so you can come up with anything that you would like. I will give you a chance to pause this video and to come up with an awesome solution to a problem that you've come up with. I'll see you soon. Alright, welcome back and great job! Before we end for today, let's take a quick summary of what we've learned. The first thing that we learned is that environmental policies are laws and regulations that relate to our environment. The next concept we learned is that environmental policies are not only created by governments, they can also be created by companies and organizations too. Lastly, we learned that environmental policy can apply to a wide range of issues, and it's very diverse. Remember, there are always multiple solutions to a given problem. It just takes creativity to find those other solutions. Okay, that was today's lesson on environmental policy. I hoped you learned something new about how laws and regulations can pave the way for us to help protect the environment and the kinds of things that you do with it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. If you did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the Cloud Project. See you next time!